Okay, here is an interesting concept, and more than likely by the time you've seen this, we've done a show on this concept. But this is more of an notation while I'm thinking about it. I was talking to a friend today who went through a really tough spot, tried suicide, all this other stuff. And because of constant harassment and all the crap that gets targeted on you, all of that. So, he made reference to something we said about a concept we called the catharsis. And what that entails is that you've gone through such a breakdown. You know, of course, people call it the dark night of the soul. But metaphysical people and New Age people think they know this concept. I practically wrote the book on it. You know, not just from experience, but, you know, knowing what I came in with. He proceeded to tell me that, no, you don't know this. You know it textbook-wise. You came in with the Akashic information. There's experiencing it, where your body goes under a catharsis or a transformation. Some people think it is carbon-based to crystalline-based. That is more of a generalization. Yes, there is a physical transformation. Even on AJ, on the Y-Files, on an episode where he said a man went to the future and switched places with somebody and found out people went through this thing called the Nibelvirch. And that translates to more like the eye of the needle. You've gone through the eye of the needle, you've come out on the other side. They even said people in the future or in that future, that particular timeline, some died going through it. And eventually they formed a new species of human that I can't remember what they called it. Obviously Homo something or other. But it's on that episode. I will get more details by the time we do an episode, or I'll put a link in the description, a link in the description underneath this. But this Nibelvirch consisted of an actual physical transformation that the brain went under, going from a more, I don't want to say materialistic, but the need for power to more of a spiritual base. And people in that future only needed to work for 2 years and then go on and do whatever they wanted. They could be a lazy bum if they wanted, and it wasn't a burden on society kind of thing. Or like on a capitalistic society. It was still capitalistic, but it was faster paced, and you could do whatever you want after that. One could say that's socialism or indentured servitude, but whatever. That's a different discussion. But this Nibelvirch, or this catharsis, as we've come to call it. We've talked about it multiple times where people go through this and end out on the other end of it. This person went through it. He noticed he gained an immunity to certain mental attacks. They still showed up, but even a reptilian, the Draco, have been more prevalent too, unfortunately. I've encountered this myself. Even today we found a snake that was close to our property, or around the foundation and whatnot. But we couldn't get in the house, but mentally it was exerting a lot, and I've been going through this catharsis thinking business is collapsing, all this other stuff. It was the end of it was basically our world was collapsing, that kind of thing. That is catharsis, or the Nibelvirch at work. And you're basically changing your chemistry. An old version of you is dying, which I thought this person did die. And by all rights, he did. And then came out on the other side totally different. So, an old version dies, a new version is born. One could call it a walk-in, and yes, there was a walk-in that assisted with this. That's more of a rudimentary understanding. That's also a different being, it's a different soul that helps out. And the forest people said he was part of their community. And I even encountered another variant of his out there that was of the oversoul that looked like him, but as a forest person. We talked about that on one of the World of Sasquatch episodes. This is the person I'm referring to. Now, the timelines favor that this person's alive again. But what ended up taking place was I was seeing the death of the old personality. Because of the Nibelvirch, or the catharsis, it required a complete death of what did not serve. And one would say that's Dark Night of the Soul, but it is more intensive than you think. Dark Night of the Soul is what people think is just a bunch of shit that happens to them in life. A series of unfortunate events, also spiritual woes, past life, karmic, and even DNA viral garbage from ancestry. Yes, that's part of it, but it is more intensive. It is a physical transformation that takes place. One could say an awakening, that's rudimentarily speaking. evolution is what it is. There was a show called Prey on years ago that showed that there was another form of human that evolved, and some were smarter, faster than regular humans, and basically Homo erectus was essentially not the top species anymore. But some were actually good and wanted to teach mankind how to evolve mentally, physically, or spiritually. And that's kind of the same difference. What I'm saying is, of course, you have the Dark Night of the Soul, you have the viruses and the DNA, but what when you pass all of that? What happens next? What in this audit process? What's the ultimate audit? The Nibelvirch, or the catharsis. AJ from Y-Files' version was a Nibelvirch. Giving credit where credit is due. Eye of the Needle is how I feel that translates. Even though the language was different in that timeline, or that time frame, or that future, or a future, it still translates to the same thing, Eye of the Needle. And you heard us talking about that on True You a lot. Yes, you're out on the other side, but the thing of it is, somebody that goes through this, and I feel there was a friend of mine that passed away recently that I feel went through it, an old version that I said in a previous video that this person attacked me in the dream sequence when I had a large machine that crushed something of hers in the dream sequence, and a ghost version of her haunted me. That very well could have been the process there, or that person could have completely passed away. I have no way of knowing that. I just felt that that version of her passed away. That very well could have mean she did die, or passed away into spirit. But the same thing happened with my other friend, where he passed away into spirit, of spirit, and the timelines changed, and also it was a Mandela effect, but also a death of another variation or alter. And that's what was needed. Because basically he was explaining you go through an extreme insanity and then come out on the other side peaceful. It doesn't mean the enemies don't see you. That was very important, even though you change frequencies. They see you, but they're less likely to be able to do something about it. They just turn around and take off. He said he looked at a reptilian, took off. And the guides were all saying he came out on the other side of the catharsis. So I wanted to explain that. We more than likely attach this to an episode about the catharsis / Nibelvirch. We got to give credit to AJ from Y-Files for that word. I like it, but I got to give credit to whom we heard it from first. But we know the concept because we've been through elements of the concept. But he explained more of the physical transformations. I will more than likely put a link to the episode underneath. Normally, we are not about linking things like that, but there was too great of an example there, as far as I'm concerned. So I will leave this here. It is 7:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Lifting. This episode was recorded on 11/18/23. We got a good one here for you folks. But before I even get into any details, I will say this, we're calling this the Eye of the Needle. I thought it was an appropriate title for what we're about to speak about. So, well, of course, before we begin any sort of discussion, I open this circle to true benevolence with no conflicting agendas. Joanna?
We are all one, and when one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. Therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, that only the highest good be done. We pray for you, your friends, your families, your loved ones, to let healing energies in. Let them love you, let them nourish you, let them bring you to your highest good. We ask for benevolence to join us now with no conflicting agenda, to allow for this conversation to be heard in the honest intent of just having discussion, sharing information, and giving you things to ponder within your life. So with that, we ask for benevolence to also usher out any malevolence or mischievous beings around us, around those that are listening, in order to have this conversation in clarity. And again, with everything, we always wish everyone out there listening around us the highest good possible. And with that, and with agreement from you, so be it.
Oh, be it, and so it is. This is actually a very fascinating topic. I do wish to say before we begin our portion of this discussion, there is a video I would like to link from the Y-Files that I'm putting now in the description, or have already, as the case may be. If you want context for some of what we are saying, this would be a good foundation to start with. Normally, we don't really mention names, but we had to cite a source in this particular video because of the fact that we are using a word that he uses. So that's from not only from a book, but he uses it quite frequently in this particular video. I wanted to make sure the source was cited for this particular other discussion.
Right. So what we're saying is that, we happen to catch this video. It's only about 20 minutes long. So a lot of you may feel free that you can pause this right now, go into the link, listen to the discussion so that you hear our discussion. We just thought it was a fascinating conversation that he had. And then we have decided we wanted to look into it a little bit further from our perspective, from what we do, and add to the conversation as a whole. Again, not saying that the person that we want you to go listen to his presentation would agree with us at all, but what we find is that it's just an interesting conversation to have, and so we wanted to kind of add to it.
Yeah, so you can pause this and go take a look at that. Now, to go into our portion of the discussion, this is a concept, and I'm going to speak in a couple generalities here, because there's some, when I say things happen to a friend of mine, I'm not referring to myself, maybe in an abstract way. But this is a concept that the Y files referred to as the Nibelvirch. And I always said, intuitively, I've always said this actually seems to translate to the eye of the needle. And what we are referring to this as, normally people have heard this concept as having gone through the dark night of the soul, bluntly put. But there was somebody that I know that actually went through this, came out on the other side of this, went through a walk-in Mandela effect type of situation, and has now gained an immunity to certain attacks. But this also does not actually mean that he doesn't need certain medicines or certain help from science. So this is actually a bridge between both sides. Just because you've gotten to a particular understanding doesn't mean that you are not needing to encode and decode reality around you and ground to the earth as well.
And it doesn't mean you still aren't going to grow. So it's not reaching a pinnacle.
It's not a pinnacle, it's another stage. And they refer to it in that Y-Files episode as an actual genetic change that people underwent. The problem I had with this is because in the beginning, they're saying a bunch of people died from this at first until one guy rose up and actually became the linchpin that allowed everybody else to not die from it. That I have a problem with. But with this, and Crum touched on this very briefly in, you will have seen a GIC episode on the Philosopher's Stone and on Hidden Objects of the Earth. He touched on this briefly in our subscription. So I will expand on this. He was waiting for us to expand on this particular topic. What he said was, and I agree with this particular statement, he said what people are seeing as faster moving and slower moving vibrations or higher and lower aren't as it seems. Say people are under the belief, like especially in the New Age and metaphysical communities, whereas compression of like your carbon DNA creates diamonds or crystalline DNA. That's from a more of a human perception, like compression of carbon creates diamonds. Yeah, that happens physics-wise. But does it happen in this reality, in the DNA? Not as such. And I will explain this. What happened, I'm starting to get foggy from even saying this, but what is going, because somebody doesn't want me to actually say this. What is actually taking place is when you go through getting rid of what doesn't serve, the viruses in the DNA, the behaviors that you need to get rid of, start encoding and decoding. What does this do? It kickstarts an actual genetic change. Some people say that that's the new DNA coming about. Yes and no. It is more of like more of a new species forming. Yes and no. What is taking place is your DNA strands multiplying a little bit. Yes, but are different energies starting to change in your brain over to more of a spiritualistic way of thinking? Yes and no. They depicted this in that episode as having, detaching from money and all this other stuff. No, there's going to be commerce. There's going to be all this. And yes, would this kill some people not ready for it? Yes, the Cabal in this time wants you to think evolving kills you because they don't want you to do it. So in this particular respect, are these energies compressing you, doing good? Maybe in a philosophical sense because you're learning from it, but is it damaging some of your cells? Yes. Are prolonged usage of your telepathy damaging some of your cells? Yes. Would you need medical help to maybe correct some of these things scientifically? Also, yes. Some people are under the misguided notion that if you transform things, energetically, it's always going to undo every little scarring that you've gone through. And that is actually not a truth. Maybe in time that will be. But what actually took place was I came to terms with a section of Torang Kal from my Atlantean period that I had to undo. This was part of a concept I call a catharsis, where your part of you is stuck in a particular point in your history that the bad guys would rather you keep regurgitating, reliving from past lives, things of that nature. We call it the mirroring. In this catharsis is you're going through a stage energetically, at the same time your body is undergoing a transformation. No, Isaac, it's not like changing into a werewolf, but with this, the genetics actually start to change. Some people have come into this world to experience this change faster. In that episode, they showed is not happening till like the year 3000. That is also incorrect. People are going through this. This is not in the future. It is now. With this change, the brain chemicals start to change. You start to encode and decode things at a much faster rate, and you are gaining more access to your oversoul's library. The good parts, you're mantling. We call it the mantling as well, where you're mantling the better aspects of your oversoul to the better aspects of your grounded avatar here. This is what is actually taking place. Now, with some people going through a physiological change, if it ran into some injury or something like this, would something like a Nibelvirch actually kill them? Maybe in some cases, if you are bringing in too much, of course it would shock the core. But people seem to think there's going to be this mass awakening or mass ascension. These things are incorrect. This is actually a physiological change that is taking place. It's not a mass awakening, but it doesn't mean that there is a Darwinian thing going on where you have like a group of people that are going to die out and you're going to have homo superiority over here. Now, that doesn't equate. You are actually paving the way for this to happen later on, like they explained in the video, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get rid of all that makes us human before that. The Darwinian philosophy does not equate here. Would others begin to have this happen later on, like they explained? Yes, but this is already happening now. And as you are passing through this eye of the needle, you are shedding what doesn't need to be there. A very pertinent example also was in the show Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, where the Reverend that was in it, or Rev Bem, he was of a different species that had some viruses in the DNA that didn't equate. It was more demonic in nature. He was always trying to fight this through the series. He goes through this process, this exact process where his genetics change, and he was able to help some of the rest of his other people after that. But what happened was they still had the choice to do ill or do good. It's not like it erased all this other negative stuff like the New Agers would have you believe. There was still choice there. There was even an episode where he thought he had gotten to a superior state and tried to help other people that were in a dark state, but he was still starting to rub off on them. He goes, "This must have made me worse." And they're like, and then the character of Dylan Hunt said, "No, you taught us that we were made up of both things, no matter what we become. We're a fusion of both good and bad tendencies, no matter what. That's just the balance, the yin and the yang." So what happens is the New Agers would have you think that you shed all the rest of this, and that video kind of said that in that way, where people were more like carefree children, and that also aliens had no interest in talking to us. They weren't interacting with us. There was no commerce anymore because we didn't have galactic trade, all that stuff. I objected to those particular parts. I even said, "Oh yeah, the New World Order has to happen because we have to get past that stage." I object to that too. That's kind of things you can stop right now. They were basically saying this is stamped in history. Star Trek does the same, where they show nuclear war, New World Order, some of those things happening in the beginning of their lore and history as well, or the post-apocalyptic horror, which was nuclear war. In World War III, they were trying to spell all of that out, and I disagree with that completely. You can prevent these things. You don't need an apocalypse to bring the 1,000 years of peace. I've never agreed with that. You can. People think, well, we just have to get past this. Yeah, do you need some things to happen like they show in Trek, where you need certain things to make it so people learn not to be a certain way anymore? Yes, I feel we already went through that with World War II, with Hitler. If people would just remember the history there. Maybe somebody will need a refresher in that area before this evolution takes place, but I don't believe so. The point I'm trying to make is when this person I know noticed that there was this old self tendency, like it's a battle between new self and old self. This catharsis is bringing about a new evolution of stability within the genetics and the energy. And some people argue I'm saying Great Awakening, and I am not, or Ascension, and I am not. What happened there was we thought this person had died, and this was still true, and even an aspect of his oversoul came in, and you'll see that on our World of Sasquatch videos. Came in and said, yes, the human avatar had died. Some people call this a walk-in process. I would agree, but this was more of a greater understanding of himself shedding and killing the old him, the one that was more susceptible, in exchange for the one that was not. I myself have been going through some of these things, and do you wake up one day and start to feel like your body is going through a particular process, accelerating maybe toxins out of the body, or basically rejecting anything you're not supposed to be touching or looking at or doing anymore? Yes, the energies also do the same. One, again, would equate this to the beginning of an awakening. I kind of object to that term because I'm already knowledgeable of these things, but this person pointed out, said, Chris, you have the book knowledge. You have to go through this in order to get the rest of the puzzle pieces. Then there won't be as much susceptibility. Did this person still get mental and physical attack by some external sources? Yes. I want to actually say this. It's not like they mysteriously couldn't see him anymore. That is a fallacy. What happened was they were just less likely to be able to do further damage. But it's not like they didn't try, because they're to the last breath. I want to actually state that, yes, you are rising above, so to speak, but it's actually the shedding, and I've seen this with multiple people going through this, the shedding of a past self. It's past self and current self fighting for basically domination in this. You have to allow, and it's not like you have to push those tendencies out. You have to allow them to fall to the wayside. And that's a hard concept for people to think. They think they have to push it out. Oh, I just can't be this way. I'm pushing this out. No, force is not required in this. It's basically letting go of that path. And it is basically the death of the old self and the emergence of the new one. People call this the new human. Again, I'm kind of objecting to some of these terms floating around out there. I like Nibelvirch because it sounds kind of like needle. I mistook and said needle instead of Nibel. When Crumb used it, he flips his D's and B's around. Sometimes I thought he said needle, but it's like eye of the needle. So I can actually see in our interpretation of it.
Because it just rung that whole other story that we've spoken about in our minds. And then then obviously seeing it, we're like, wait a minute, I think they are talking about that subject.
They are talking about this. And this was before we even saw that particular episode. I heard them them talking in the background. Oh, he's going through this. Others are going through this.
And that's a clear thing that I want to say is that I believe that multiple people are going through this. Now, when you're going through some of this, naturally, as you mature as a person, you could actually just think, I've just matured as a person, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think what it is that, as we've said from the beginning, as we've always said, the big deal is to know who you are, to know who you are not. And then when you start identifying as somebody, but are your actions, are you being congruent with your own personal way that you talk about things or you act about things and do about things? Are you being congruent? Now, many times you're going to find yourself being incongruent. Okay. And then the question is, well, who am I? Well, I'm this person. That kind of thought processes oftentimes are what generates some of this activity, because the goal is, are you who you say you are? Then do your words and actions and thought processes match? So if you have the desire, this is who I, want to be and be represented in the world, then there may be shedding of things that need to go. And it is not instant pudding. It is a process. Some people will say that certain ways of thinking come with maturity, certain ways of thinking, come with a change in their frequency. I'm going to say yes to both of those. But it isn't.
It doesn't mean that because you're cognizant of the process doesn't mean just because you have the book knowledge and you came in with that doesn't mean that you don't have to either go through it, or it doesn't mean that you automatically are immune. You become more immune after the process.
And it doesn't mean that you have to know anything of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be conscious of your soul is actually doing that with
cognition makes almost no difference.
No, yeah. It just is bad. It's just a matter of people and good, people just saying, wait a minute, and they just personally self-reflect. They don't have to know anything about the spiritual journey that we talk about and recognize. They don't have to know a thing about it to actually go through some of these processes. And again, what will happen is that you'll start to notice that your actions and the way you are and the way you think now become more in alignment to who you say you are. What you'll also probably notice during these processes is that it is easier for you to live in the current present moment. You're able to focus more on what is just right in front of you, not feeling the need to look through the list of all of the things you have on your schedule for today. You can actually listen to conversation without feeling the need to go ahead and make a response in your mind while you're being spoken to, because you're not then really active listening if you're already making responses. So you'll notice changes. You'll also be more in acceptance and grounded to the world as it is. I think, it's a process, and, you'll go through a lot of phases within it: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. You're going to go through a lot of these phases, and some may transition through it in a way that just feels like natural growth. Some may hit a level of they feel like they're going to go insane, and some may not be able to handle the conflict. And want to not be here anymore, to be quite frank. But all of these things are the possibilities of what will happen. What I, like about the conversation is I always love to hear conversations that are basically what I consider a spin off of things that we've always talked about. And again, one of the things that we've always talked about is how does the powers that be, those that are not there for your highest good, that are basically trying to stir humanity for what they want, what are the strategies that they go through in order to try and dominate a conversation or a way of being that they know they cannot stop? So this is something that is natural. When we go all the way back to our discussions, and we've always said that we went down the toilet first, that it was one of those things that people are afraid of Armageddon, not because of what we think it could be, but because it's done. It's already been done, and who wants to repeat it?
So several times in history it's been done.
Yeah. Right. And so again, when you look at where we are, it's like, are we going to flush down the toilet again? Or are we going to choose another experience? One of the things that we've said is that in order to move into a new experience, there has to be more of an acceptance, a unity of having differences and being okay with it. Again, I'm not saying free for all. We're talking, there's a common understanding of what's acceptable. Pedophilia is not acceptable, and abuse is not acceptable. But again, with certain foundational belief system that everyone agree on, and then there can be, differences in a way a culture wants to behave. And that unity is the respect of it and being able to get along with these differences. Now, what we would say is there has to be personal growth to get to the mindset, right, of those differences being okay to have. Some would say that this Nibelvirch, which again was discussed, is that maturity and growth within a person or within humanity that allows for those differences, but it doesn't mean at all that you're a doormat. So what you will stand up, and you will stand up for the foundational beliefs, and you're not a doormat, but you have a more of a natural ability to then live in that truth of the desire for unity, a desire for understanding, and maybe in your own way, in your own energies, able to model that more, okay, which then those energies can spread out. So unlike the story that basically said it really can't happen for hundreds of years, it doesn't even logically make sense, because the way energies work anyway, you are
I
going
can
to have,
understand evolution takes a while, but yeah, that still didn't make sense. Yeah.
well, right, because again, energies have to support what you're trying to move into. And a lot of times certain energies are brought in by the physical people who are walking around, the vibration that they are at, and different things, and they aid in either bringing a society down if there's a lot of people. And again, what we're talking about, energies that are more about fighting, about disagreeing, about just survival, those energies, or an energy in an area that starts to develop that is more accepting, has fundamental beliefs, kind of, can share and can get along. This is what we're talking about. But those energies have to somehow come within society. And a lot of times they're coming in with people either born into that frequency or going into those kinds of frequencies where, again, they shed a lot of things that are affecting them from past lives or current situations, where they can figure out who they are, and then they can vibrate out. We've been speaking about these concepts forever since we've been talking. So this is what we're talking. The other concepts that we have been speaking about have to do with more of a chessboard and the strategy. So if you were not wanting this to happen, right? If you didn't want this type of unity and growth to go on, well, and you felt that you had the magic mirror of being able for hundreds of years, let's say, to look into the future, to put things in place to try and drive society, knowing that we are creative beings, and knowing that you can maybe alter the co-creative processes of people away from what is a natural desire to not go down the toilet again and to have a different experience, what would you do? We've spoken before about, we've used the Gardner family name, people that, yeah, time travel exists. Yeah. Can you go into the past? Can you affect the dynamics? Can you affect the political system? Can you affect who gets in charge in order to drive a conversation in a certain way? Our perspective is yes, you can. So again, from my personal opinion, looking at this, what I throw up on the table, throw it on the board, is what we potentially could be seeing in this conversation is like, what if you can convince people to kick it down the curb for a while? What if you can convince people that this is the pattern of how it occurs? Mm-hmm. What if you can convince people that if they're going to go through this now or going through it, they're going to die? Because you can co-create, well, I'm going to die. right? So what, what if part of this was they had to talk about, again, a truth that is out there and a concept that is out there, but how can they control the conversation by defining it, by defining what will happen, by defining that it won't be happening from hundreds of years. And again, as we've said, if you want to go out into space and control commerce, then you're also going to try to convince people that they're not interested in interacting, that everybody's just fine
Or
on
no
Earth.
money to interact with. Yeah.
Well, no money to interact with, but no desire, because part of that was actually that you don't care because we're going to work our 2 years of our lives, and then we're just going to sit around and be joyous and work on something we want to do. It was so nebulous. I loved how nebulous that what are you doing with yourself time was. What are you actually doing? Because what many humans naturally want to do is like take something and make it better, a better rocket ship, a better, people are always tinkering, trying to create, or that's how human nature is. That's trying to be stomped out of them. So would those opportunities in that society where you only work 2 years and then you can do whatever you want, will there even be opportunities for that type of co-creations to exist with the regular public? Or, are they going to stomp that down? So I find this whole story, I do hope that you stopped, and actually listened to it before hearing this conversation, because I find it's a fascinating conversation. I throw out on the board personally that it was something that had to be addressed in public, because it's not that people weren't going through it, but how do you stop it? And how do you then run that agenda? And so that is my perspective on what I think, is a part of why this came out. I find the whole subject matter interesting. Like I said, the gentleman on the Wi-Fi's, again, referenced where did he get this conversation from, referenced the books and referenced everything. At the very end, what will be interesting for you to hear is what he discovered when he tried to locate the gentleman. And so I hope you heard it, and I hope you heard what he said. But again, people's mindsets are, when you want something so badly, you're going to want to just grab onto it, and then you're going to push away any periphery because this is what you want to hear.
And it doesn't preclude the fact that that process would happen regardless whether the story was true or not. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, what I'm saying is that, you tend to want to believe something so badly, even though there's other conversation that may say, wait a minute. So the gentleman who wrote the book, I think, the gentleman on the Wi-Fi's brought up great examples of who he potentially could be and his purpose for doing it. I think the third rationale was true, but you know who I am. And so when I hear who he was and how he was established in society and, so trustworthy or whatever, and look at the job he had, I just think, well, so I'm sorry, because that's what they want to do. Listen to me. I'm the honest, truest, fairest person in the world. And I really care for you. And since you are going to believe that, and there's no other motives, then you may be willing to believe what then comes forth. Again, this is where we say, that you want to discern the message and not the messenger. Mm-hmm. This was one of those things where maybe the messenger was sold, and thus the story became considered more interesting, maybe more accurate than it really was.
Yes, and I found that episode interesting. There's plenty of other material on there as well. There is actually a very good example, what we just said about the oppressors not wanting you to evolve or saying it will kill you or something like that. In Star Trek Discovery, there is a character in it by the name of Suru. His people were going through like a Nibelvirch type process, but they were told that it was like more of a half-life, like it would kill them after a certain time. It's because the oppressors wanted to keep culling the people, because those people had been the oppressors in the past, so they felt they were punishing them by tricking them later on. So, and then when this character goes through this process, he goes, we believed a lie this whole time. We're not dying from this. We're being reborn. He became more assertive. He became a bit more grounded. and both grounded and spiritual. So I find that that was actually a very, very good example in that show. I don't know the season, but that's what popped into my head, that that's the exact process, that from oppression to genetic and spiritual alteration. So I thought that was actually quite interesting. An alien character, but it fits. So now I was seeing if also, just like on the GIC episodes that preceded this, I was seeing if Chrome would be the one to speak on this today, and I believe he actually is. So he's been quite active lately. Ever since I took care of that Atlantean remnant, he was there during those times, and even long before, millions of years. So he was able to see some of these evolutionary aspects, and he also was able to come through clearer now that that remnant of Toran Kal has been bounced. Toran Kal was like basically being the gatekeeper to the rest of the library. The library chose that because it was the oldest expression, because millions of years old prior to Atlantis. But then it became more of a gatekeeper and kind of got in the way after a while. The holding you in a past versus transforming the library, just like Frank Frazetta said, transforming it into something that more fits what you're learning now. So yeah, this hang on, I gotta make sure this is actually Chromable. Oh, okay, yeah. All right. Sometimes I have to take a second look because sometimes he looks like a gigantic disembodied head. Mm. Oh yeah, Isaac, you found that funny, but it's because he's so big. I don't see the rest of him. It's like that cartoon where a guy's looking for a giant, and he ends up sitting on a large big toe in a sandal or a foot, and giant's right there. So that's essentially how that is. You could be walking past even remains of giants. I found out that they are rocks and stones and trees. So yeah, forest people fit that, but we talked about that on that GIC episode as well. So okay, Chrome. Ooh, man. All right. Do the crystal, please, like the past couple of days. He thinks the crystal is the thing that is also completely needed. Eventually, his brain will be the thing, and not just the crystal. You see, this Nibelvirch you have been referring to is that process. Yes, all the channelings over the years have also prepared him code-wise for this. Also, his that Atlantean remnant, as he calls it, which is very apt of a description, also allowed him the comprehension necessary for the physics involved. But book knowledge does not preclude that of experience, you see, and the past life experiences all led up to this point, as what is usually said. Now, is everything everywhere happening all at once, like in that episode? Yes. It is not necessarily linear. Yes. Is it as fragile as your Marvel Cinematic Universe makes it out to be? No. This is what I want to emphasize. Yes, there are incursions, but yes, this is a different topic, but it is not that fragile. Everything balances fairly quickly. Could you destroy an environment if you really pushed it? Yes. But just like your fake, the climate change narrative, taking a real topic and turning it political, this is essentially what the other thing was doing. But in this stage of evolution, as I explained, I will recap from yesterday, was the fact that what you think is compression and needing that oppression to evolve, wrong. It is there to learn from in that moment, but it doesn't mean you need to keep having it happen. This you do not always need suffering, pain, torment, and holding back. If you are recognizing these sources holding you back, of course you cut them loose. This is the splitting of the densities, as you call it. Or the environment automatically does this. The energies automatically do it the more you move along in your own evolution. Now, what people think is compression from carbon to crystalline base is not a correct concept. As I said before, people think you're going to poof ascend into a 5D, whatever the hell they think it is. But you are changing your perspective and perceptions. But as that faster moving energy goes, of course, your heart would beat faster. Of course, your mind would be able to decode and encode things better. Just because you know of the process doesn't mean that the process isn't any less painful. That is not what I am saying. It can be a catharsis, as you say, and that is very perfect. Getting rid of the old and being in the current present, not be anchored to a preconceived notion of what yourself was supposed to be. Meaning, like if your identity was skewed by somebody thinking you were supposed to be a societal norm and you had to become your true self, this is essentially what I am speaking. You're getting rid of the viruses in the DNA. You are getting rid of the ancestral garbage. You're getting rid of the past life garbage, as you all are beginning to do. You become more grounded, more focused. And yes, the genes also allow for a particular immunity switch to come on. This is also the thing with the chakras, as I was saying in that conversation. These were added by the Draco and the Orions many eons ago, as he would say, hardened or forced compressed light to surround different energy centers, therefore putting you towards a spiritual path that actually did not exist. It was more the soul trade and the Lushing process. That you have energy centers which evolve, but these are the shackles of illusion in this way, not in a matrix sort of way like your movies would have you believe to try to get you into full transhumanism, but you must leave those things choices to other people. True evolution in this way is walking the path, not forcing the path, not basically beating these stupid club over people's heads, you see, because they need to wake up. No amount of doing this will get someone to wake up unless they were already going through this process. I wish to emphasize if they were meant to, that means they come in to do this very thing. People think, oh, it worked on this person. Why is it not working on this person? Because it was not meant to. This genetic process by which they describe in the show was actually not necessarily completely dead on accurate, but the concept is that you're going through the here and the now, where your body and genes do adapt. Your brain is encoding, decoding differently, even if you are somebody that has come in with the book knowledge like himself. It took him a while to comprehend multiversal physics, temporal and time travel physics. That had to require a slight rewiring of his brain chemistry. Also, this catharsis he's going through, where there's a part of you that literally dies. I must say, there's a part of you that literally dies, as he saw with his friend. And you will become the best version of you. That is also a mantling, like him and Ryan call from his Elder Scrolls, the Oversoul and the Avatar, taking their best portions and mantling and grounding them here in the I Am Presence. That is exactly what is happening, both in the spiritual sense and in the physical sense. Just like there are some people that have not reached this yet. Just like, say, if you went to an average Joe, for instance, and attempted to build the bridge of this knowledge to them, they would take the book knowledge. They'd even believe you at times. But have they gone through this catharsis? No. This is what your New Age community does not understand. They think it's going to be ascension, this. You have this preconceived notion that is this big awakening. It's all flowers, roses, and unicorns. No. And I don't care if the Alarum are offended by that. They have to not be pansies, exactly. But in this, even the forest people find that funny. But in this particular way, some people know that you have to go through certain things, certain pains, certain struggles a little bit to understand and become a real you, as he likes to say. But it does not mean that record gets to skip repeatedly and that you have to draw this in to become this. Compression. Yes, in reality, does that make diamonds and crystals? Yes. And heat, does that make that? Yes. It does not mean that these energies that people are feeling on the outside are that they are trying to make you think that compression from that outward energy that's bombarding the planet, which is actually artificial intelligence, is getting you to think that it is there to compress the carbon into diamonds. You know how damn long it takes to do something like this. I am the appropriate age that this would actually happen in. Millions of years. What is actually happening is that your frequency is going faster rate. It is rewiring your brain in that Nibelvirch concept. It is grounding you, but it does not mean that you do not need interventions from science if you are injured. It doesn't mean you have become Clark Kent all of a sudden. This is what I wish to emphasize. The other thing that people are talking about, and I told him the concept, yes, to have a crystalline DNA is true, but you're also dealing with other species that have gotten the crystalline DNA from not encountering as many toxins out there in the galaxy, or Untumbans. When they pass away, they leave crystals behind. When our people pass away, we leave stones and rocks behind. When the forest people pass away, they leave wood, stone, and sometimes creepishly bugs. But this, I am actually kidding. They do not leave bugs, but they leave stones. This is why people cannot find skeletons. This takes a little time to accomplish. And I say a little, I mean a lot. But humans are well on their way to having that happen. But this Nibelvirch is the beginning of a much greater process the whole species will eventually go through, like we did. We are all related, you see. This may fast track a little, but it is not a carbon to crystalline DNA that you are being told, because you have seen it in other races that have gone, that have elevated even hundreds of thousands of years past yourselves. They have remembered certain things. They have gone through certain things that have been stunted in yourselves. I wish to emphasize this. This does not mean you are victims. This means you have an opportunity to reach that. This process of what was being said, that still means you are a carbon-based life form. Even crystal is carbon. I wish to point that out. This is where your New Agers have it wrong, because they are, some of them in past lives are remembering these things from galactic history. This does not mean that it's like that. And I wish to point this out.
Well, thank you. So this is such a fascinating discussion.
We would be creeped out if it did happen fast, actually. But yes.
Yes. And, you know, such a fascinating discussion. I feel so lucky that sometimes we run across different discussions to bring them in. This happens to be one of them. Again, I kind of try to allude to, so I am curious of your perspective on when kind of the thought processes that people could notice that they were doing prior and then afterwards. I think one of the things is, like you said, it's not like we're going to, I don't like to use the term, but I use it because it is descriptive. You run across stupid people, right? That you feel like, well, how are they managing? What are they doing? What are they thinking?
Yes. How do they go? How do they breathe the air? And how does all that?
Right. And you may think, and you may, obviously look at people and you realize you may have a hard time interacting with them. And that's okay. You be simple, interact with people and just go along your merry way. I think that, my curiosity is, because I think that's a big deal right now, in that judgmental, and I don't mean, again, I'm not saying judgmental, but we categorize people, our brains categorize. And so, we categorize things, categorize people. It makes it easier for us who we're gonna, be around, who we're not going to be around. What do we want to be a part of? What do we not want to be a part of? All of that, is important. And I think that, again, sometimes people that may be working within this process, do you feel quite alone? Don't feel that other people understand. But that's when you're in the process. Going to the other side, when you're actually through the process, I would venture to say that probably you would be just more accepting that, yep, in this world, you've got all kinds, stupid people exist. And, you accept it, you interact with people, you learn how the skill of being able to maybe just interact simply to get what you need to be done, but you're not doing it within the judgment, I think, that you maybe once were. And I think that's a big deal. So on that subject, not knowing, what is your perspective on how our thoughts change, and then how does that guide us through walking the earth?
How your thoughts change going through this. Yes, there is an insanity beforehand. More of it seems like a compression and even more oppression that may be taking place in these, I don't want to say final moments, because that is incorrect. Some people would think I'm saying the final moments before a death or a final goodbye or some crap like that. No, like a funeral. I suppose it kind of can be, but it feels like you're running out of time, like you are dying inside. The other Atlantean remnant that you spoke to was also thinking of living in the final moments of Atlantis. You're running out of time. You're running out of time. It's like that he sees a reference in his Fallout 76 where there was this robot reliving the days before the bomb dropping disaster in the game sequence, where it was reliving trying to prepare for Halloween that was coming and carving jack-o'-lanterns, saying there's very little time before the party kind of thing. That's kind of what Toran Kal was going through. It was like that repetitive over and over. You will feel these repetitive over and overs. You will feel an insanity going, why is this not functioning properly? Why is this not working when others skate past me? You will feel this where you're standing still. But in that stillness, or what is appears to be a stillness, there forms a realization that you don't have all the pieces yet, emotionally and physically. And this is true. As you are going through this, not unlike what you know as the walk-in process, even though that is more of a possession sort of thing or a channeling sort of thing, like what I am doing now, like what happened to his mother or other people. It is the walk-in process, but it doesn't mean that there's always a different soul there. You may be shedding things that do not serve. Other souls may be coming in to help you in a particular time. You call them guides, but you get the idea. In any case, the true walk-in process is this catharsis, or the Nibelvirch. And this eventually will happen to everyone? Maybe. There'll be some that may not have it happen at all in their lifetime. But if you're going through a certain process, you have to be very careful not to co-create its demise. Yes, the bad beings out there notice that if you have a greater propensity for creativity and you are not doing certain things, think of the term idle minds of the devil's workshop will come in and try to rewrite things for you and send you further into the loop, into the insanity loop that you are not honoring because you are not honoring the moment. Planning things out is wonderful, like you have been doing. Goals are wonderful. But in the moment in time, allow yourself to go through this process. And you will find that manifestations are easier. The filtration between intention and manifestation is much smaller. This is where you have to be careful because you still have your full complement of emotions. You still have your personality. It is just easier to manage your human mind. It is easier to manage your personality, minus also the viruses in the DNA that you have excluded. And those things you can snip loose, not necessarily quickly, but you can by exhibiting the opposite traits by which those viruses were forged in the family lineage. You go opposite of that, and you live that way. You are getting rid of that virus in the DNA. You are becoming the antigen. That is simple. What I'm talking about is you cannot mistake the insanity for evil. Evil, true evil out there, will get you to think that you have fallen when you have not. And also these faster moving frequencies may seem like you are falling into a pit of despair when you are not. Doesn't mean you stay there. Just like when he found out about some of his SSP stuff, when he freed himself of knowing the not knowing, he became more sovereign. That's when those frequencies began to really stir in those areas. Doesn't mean you need to know all of it. Just some things, a recognition of reality, a recognition of grounding, a recognition of a path. And just like he did with Toran Kal's history with Atlantis, it was the same kind of recognition. And also what was needed here was some of the knowledge. And what is not needed here, the final moments of that supposed failure, when in fact it was the library's purpose all along to go through that failure on Atlantis because it was too far gone. So in this respect, going through this insanity, and I'm not saying people need to draw an insanity to them like they like the law of attraction, which is also somewhat bullshit too, because sometimes it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. Whereas I'm a good person, so I'm attracting crap. I'm a bad person, so I'm attracting crap. No, that's not how this works. They either want to smother the light or they want you to, they're attracted to your darkness. That is pure bullshit. So in this respect, can you draw certain things to you through co-creation? Yes. And I am saying that you have to be careful in this one particular stage while the brain is rewiring. Yes, the parasites show those things are obnoxious as holy hell. I understand. The also ghouls, they will think somebody is dying, and they are attracted to death and decay. That is their purpose, kind of like worms or maggots. They are not. They are basically feeding off the residual energy in the bones. That is the curse of Enlil at work. Whereas he cursed the water in the bones to be able to tie a ghost to it, or to always have ghouls about. What else would your perceived devil want to do? Even though that is not necessarily a true story with the devil, I'm just saying. In this particular way, this is why you have seen ghouls. This is why you have seen curses. This is why you have seen both fairy curses, ghouls, puckwudgies, and all around horned demons, because they are detecting a death of self, and they wish to capitalize on this. They are also trying to accelerate something. They do not know that they have become part of accelerating a certain thing. This does end at some point, but it doesn't mean that they don't try. Hence, they are to the last breath. It doesn't mean that the mental harassment is completely gone. It doesn't mean that they haven't destabilized you in some fashion, that you don't need a booster from your medical sciences. And I don't mean the contaminated version, I mean the real version. And it doesn't mean that that's all dark or evil in that area, which some people are convinced out there that it is, just so that they do not accept help when it actually rears its head. This is what the point I was trying to make.
So what do you think about my throwing on the board the fact that, it's a process that's natural, it's inevitable, people are going to go through it. What can we do to control it? And put out a narrative to try and, again, make people think that if they even think they're going through it at this year, that you're going to die from it. But I mean, what do you think about that? And the whole, again, I guess this would fall under the big heading of the Gardner category, people going back to re-put things in or to push things through the present. But
yes. Saying that everybody's going to die going through this. No. It's like that one character in the Star Trek program that he was talking about. They were convinced they were going to die if they went through this. It is also another angle to this, was said in your Stargate SG-1 program, talking about ascended beings, by which Merlin was teaching Daniel Jackson that it required many millennia to reach that evolved state, and not just 1,000 years like he had thought, but without help. They were because he was basically saying the character of Jackson was basically saying he got help from one of Merlin's people in it, or the ancient people that was in it, to hyper accelerate the process. He couldn't have done it on his own. And even encountering that being earlier on in the series, basically saying, I didn't do this, you did this the whole time. That's basically somebody that was the yield at work, basically saying that you had to give away your power to another being to hyper accelerate the process. And that is completely 110% incorrect. And you are not going to burst into energy like they show in the show. You, again, this they even showed people trying to go through the process earlier by artificially stimulating it, and they died, or they going through it early and they died. That was also being poorly put. This was the yield at work. Anytime you hear anything like this, where you evolve, you die, or you'll be hurting others around you and stuff like that, either being a pain in the ass or you'll physically hurt them in some fashion. Even though he ran into this while he was going through some energy work and caused supposed harm to people around them. They were not ready for this, so they thought they were being harmed. Like with the devices, they think it's because it's hitting a nerve or an attachment that the device is somehow harming. That's how that perception is currently. With this, it's the same thing. They will these people out there will convince you that it is wrong. Your Star Trek Next Generation showed this as well. A group of people started to evolve in a genetic way on this one planet, and the rest of them were scared and considered it to be a disease. And then one character said they told us it was a disease when it was actually evolution. Another prime example. They tried to go the ascension route, but you get the idea. This, they will try to tell you it's a disease, that you're insane. What you're picking up on is actually delusion, schizophrenia, depression, all of these things, even though it can cause divides and insanity, as I've said before, and cause real physical damage. some of the powers that be out there will try to think you either A, have to be dependent on them to get to an evolutionary state, or B, or like in your economy or whatnot, being dependent on, like they did to the native peoples and whatnot, by taking their resources. But in this, they will also be try to get you to believe that it is always deadly. They will always get you to believe that it will kill you if you even step 1 foot into this evolutionary process and open the door at all. And that is simply not true. This is where the propaganda is. This is where you always will see it, that there's somehow death, destruction, and doom associated with this. And hence people believe this because they spot ghouls and stuff like that in that interim period. So they believe the propaganda and that tagline because of what is around them. That's and not that the bad guys didn't unleash some of those ghouls to heighten that up, but some of these are dimensional as well, where they're naturally attracted to this. So this is hopefully the answer to your question.
Yeah, it's great. And then the other thing, because the one thing that humans have a tendency to do at this current place where a lot of people are, is wanting to be in the in crowd. And so, one of the interesting things, again, my belief system, I'm curious what your perspective is that, whatever this gets labeled, needlework, going through the idea, whatever it gets labeled, the title that they're going to choose.
Or tapestry needlework, you could say that.
Yeah, whatever it gets called. I think the interesting thing is that when you actually are going through that process and you do reach the other end, you're not going to be saying you're a part of a club. I think it's very interesting because that will be unimportant.
You won't need the club, and also camaraderie and solidarity is fine. But the ones you're referring to are the champions, cool kids, and he calls them smokers corner. You don't need that.
And you won't do it, I think. I think that the thing is about it is that you can just quietly go along your merry way, being where you are, genuinely just being able now to see people potentially where they are and letting them be. But again, the concept being that, just those vibrations walking around Earth and being in certain places help to facilitate growth in other people without speaking a word, just being yourself, being the person you say you are, and hopefully then your words and actions are mentioned. I say that because of what I feel could happen. And I would feel that if I were strategy playing for the other side, I would want to develop is the Cool Kids Club over this. So watch for what I would call the development of the Cool Kids Club over something like this, because I guarantee you it ain't them. And it will be kind of like wearing a badge of honor or being an ambassador to, or that's just my feelings about how somebody would try to control this. But in actually, like you're saying, they may have the book knowledge and they may, be able to read it and understand it, but they're going to try to manipulate it in a way to keep you from going through it. But if they can make you believe you have, and you're one of the cool kids, then they now control a narrative that you're potentially falling for. And
yes,
so it won't happen except if it's being controlled.
Yes, you are absolutely correct, and you will see that community go through its catharsis, or implosion is actually a better term, because there comes a time where if you are running a narrative and you don't deliver on that narrative in some way, shape, or form, it must either collapse or transform. It must be uncreated or recreated. And this is what your Kabbalists are doing. They know that there can't be the particular alien interaction that they wished now. Too many others are actually seeing through this now since your 2020 events. And this is a truth, where some people did wake up to some of this, but on their own and in solidarity with others that were also doing this. Yes, there are some dumbasses in this, I will not disagree, and that are not paying attention, like with your masks and all of this other stuff. I'm not precluding this. But with this, in your cool kids crowd, you will start to see others join this cool kids crowd that you were not expecting, because They, I don't want to say they're falling for the tagline, but that is what is happening. And the race that they were wanting to slow drip into the minds of people are actually others are starting to decode and encode their forms, like myself or Elena, Vessa, Isaac, any of us, and Forest people. We're starting to, all of us are starting to, I don't want to say get entrenched in the minds of others, but to decode into the minds of others and encode upward. But this is happening with multiple species. Your ICC is trying to funnel the traffic as to who comes in and presents themselves, because there have been some that they thought have been troublemakers, as it were, both dimensionally and spatially, galactic and earthly. Some of your force people have been some of those. This is why the Draco have been pounding them a little bit. Not as hard as last time, though. And you'll see an uptick in some of them. You'll see narratives out there that, oh, these species will somehow melt away in the new energy. No, this is not what is happening. It is that you are seeing a flood in of other races that are also either hedge betting or they're introducing themselves. You'll see this yin and yang going on. Some are hedge betting, some are just saying hello. You have to be able to differentiate the two. And in your cool kids crowd, they are focused on a singular goal, and that is disclosure. I am not poo-pooing this, but what is being disclosed, and what is the narrative by which these champions, as you call them very aptly, are disclosing, that is either hindering people's needlework or empowering it? Are they saying, oh, you need the assistance of this, you need this? Of course, these technologies are needed. Of course, all of this. And what some of your insiders are saying, yes, is absolutely true, where this should be disclosed. That is oppression if it is not. I am absolutely agreeing with this. But you can actually get to a stage, not that it doesn't matter, but then that narrative has no hold on you. When you get to the stage where the narrative has no hold on you, the people running the narrative do not, and you can introduce yourself to these different species, and they will be glad to speak to you. This is where I'm at with it.
Well, thank you. Again, such an interesting topic to talk about. I just want to open the floor again. You may have certain perspectives for this you want to bring into this conversation. I'd just like for you to go ahead and bring that in. And like I said, I'm really hopeful you guys have stopped the video by now and looked at what we're talking about and come back to this to really then be able to fully understand the rest of this conversation. And I am actually beside myself thrilled that we're having this conversation and that this information to be able to listen to will be able to be put out there, because I just find it fascinating. So with that, I'm just going to open the door, let you say whatever you want, whatever you feel needs to come in.
Yes, I also wish to say some of the things you have been running into financially and seeing other friends doing things and such. I will speak in a generality, not in a personal respect. But where other people are running into things where people seem to be going past them. This is not necessarily true. That just means that sometimes it can mean they're on their path, in their lane and on path, and you're on yours. But if you know you're resonating with that same path, and you must accept the help that's involved. You may think that you are by calling out for help and doing things. There's a difference between saying and doing. Or it's just like with your Yoda saying there's no such thing as try, or the way he spoke it, actually. Try not, or something like that. I do not speak like Yoda. So, but I do agree with the philosophy. But yeah, there is a flaw in that as well. So trying is also building up the co-creation. They always say, well, if it isn't working, you weren't supposed to do it. But then there's also the analogy of the person, the two people digging for treasure, one backs off too early. Too, your intuition is saying keep going, but what you think is reality in front of you is telling you stop. There's oppression involved, but at the same time there's work involved. But at the same time, the people that came up with the philosophy saying that it always would, like something not working over and over again means you weren't supposed to do it. That is bullshit. Because after a while, if something isn't taking for a very, very long period of time. Yes, that can mean you're not supposed to do it, but also at the same time, beings not always assisting you means you're sometimes approaching this Nibelvirch, and that you must go through it. Afterwards, and during, you will start to see changes already occurring during this, and the calm, or the analem that, like the forest people say. You will see all of this coming to fruition, the manifestations that you've been so heavily putting out there come to pass. And I'm not saying this is true of every single human being. Some walk their paths for a reason. Some are ending cycles. Some are starting good ones. This it just depends on the individual's past. This is why, past, present, future, this is why there is no such thing as a great awakening or a mass ascension. What will happen is people become more knowledgeable on things, changing perspectives and perceptions. This is key now. This is key. You must accept what is, but I also am not saying that I'm telling you what to do, but there are certain things that in your world are going to happen anyway. You have to come to terms with some of those things, but at the same time, you don't have to accept or tolerate different levels of oppression. And also any knowledge out there that would promote, or any path or narrative that would promote division or acceptance of oppression, or oppressing any form of people, any form of belief system, any form of choice. This does not mean that it's Darwinian, where some people just die off and you just continue as a new species. No, this was an implanted Kabbalist ideal survival of the fittest. No, this is not a truth. What is a truth is you have several species and species coatings coexisting all on the same planet. This is what is currently happening right now. Evolution is not completely what you think it is. It is a little bit of the Darwinian, but it was mostly yield that was taking place. I believe I've made my point, yes.
Yes, and thank you. And again, any final words before we go ahead and close this off today?
Yeah, I've said what I came to say, but this is done ranting at this particular point. This is things that you would say that grind my gears, so to speak, or really, let's just say, really grind the gears. This is why I am saying these things. See, we do, even at my stage, being millions of years old, I still experience frustration.
Well, it is interesting. So I will ask one last question before we close this off. From your perspective, watching the growth of humanity as you have been, how do you think in this particular subject matter, the spiritual growth and continue evolution of humanity, do you feel in general, because people always want to know, how are we doing? How is it going? What do you feel from your perspective?
It may not seem that you are doing fine, but you are. You have help in areas you don't recognize. You have assistance, again, in areas you don't recognize. And there are narratives playing that you believe fully and completely, but maybe you should not. But even some in the spiritual area and religious areas, and even in the news, especially areas, political, geopolitical, all of these things. You will see these collapse, but it does not mean that suddenly these energies are coming in to collapse them for you. People say, oh, you can't fight what's coming. What is exactly coming again? That would be you guys recognizing that a lot of these narratives are bullshit. This is what you need to understand.
So again, the old phrase we've used for many years, deny the known and manifest differently. And that's what is actually part of going on. And I like the fact that some of our oldies but goodies phrases, even we understand better, I think, than we did 6 years ago. That we understand what it means to, let's just say, walk that talk. And, not recognizing even within ourselves through our lifetime, the indoctrination that's occurred that has to be shed away. Again, I always stand up and applaud when somebody's able to put a ruse over people. You have to, again, applaud the intelligence that went behind doing all this. And so now is the opportunity, if people wish to take it, to deny the known, manifest differently, shed away those things that really aren't there for humanity's good or for the good of what you wish to see in humanity over the years to come. And then basically, let's just move on into it. You know, that should be the excitement of it all. Although, again, in these times, at this date, you know, things are very uncomfortable, but you can always put your energies out that I do not want this.
Yeah, do not throw the baby out with the bathwater, even if that narrative or the cool kids collapse does not mean there isn't truth there.
Exactly. And again, what is the world you wish to see? And then how do you start acting that way in this world and truly acting in congruency to you, what you say your belief system is? So this is the exploration I think that humanity is on right now, that we're trying to walk the talk, trying to shed away these things, and we'll continue to have these conversations, especially when we run across fascinating discussions that we want to contribute to as well. So hopefully we'll have a lot more of these pop up. I think it's brilliant. And I really appreciate you coming today. And then, you know, you can say your farewell and we'll let Chris back in.
Yes, thank you all for listening to what I have to say. And so he does not whine any further. You might want to get on the other website. Yes. So I am just poking fun at him, but yes, get on there. There's more that I speak on that site. So thank you, everyone. My eyes always water when he's around. Isaac, for some reason, said because he has a lot of hair. I don't know what the hell that meant, but okay. But he's 150 feet tall for people that don't understand, and he can shrink and grow back down. I see him as like a wizard-looking person, but he's actually up and high in the mountains. He revealed where he actually was to me. He's in the Atlas Mountains in Africa, overlooking the Eye of Sahara. So that's where he physically is located at the moment. I think this is a good place to take this out. If you want to do a affirmation blessing to end.
Yes, of course. Blessings as always to everyone that listened. We always and will always wish you your highest good. Understand that so many people are going through some of the similar circumstances that you are, and understand that we do understand how hard it is to be congruent in the world we live, but we wish you well always. Take care, guys.
And I now close this circle with true benevolence with no conflicting agendas. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Okay, I will say this. Going through also this catharsis, when Joanna was asking on one of the Sasquatch episodes we were filming, I said I had to remove a part from the show. And that's when Fuma came in and was talking about some of the soul stuff and some of the ill emotions that I had based on Toran Cowell's history and things of that nature from Atlantis, you know, having been extricated from the Atlantean Council, having been hunted, having been persecuted, have been, you know, because also he gave into some of the telepathy of the witch, basically, then, all that, and the women of Atlantis, all that stuff. And when Joanna basically grabbed Adriana's counterpart, grabbed Taran Kal and made sure he wasn't soul-rendered by the Orions, but he was going to go in and charge in there and destroy them, try to save Atlantis, just like they tried to save Asgard. These were fixed points in time, and it was over and over and over and over again, like in Loki trying all the different aspects, and all he had to do was let one thing go, completely rewrite and unwrite a couple of things, and he was done. So it was the same thing, and that was part of the catharsis as well. Whereas once she confronted him, he took a step back and some of the ill emotions from the mirroring of that part of Atlantis ceased. I have the information, but it's not the mirroring of the ill emotions or the ill energetic garbage that would arc from that time. That's what the women of Atlantis did and the scientists did when they opened the communication arc, or the arc to the energy back to the destruction of Asgard time frame. Those were when the Orions were more powerful. And that's where they were getting some of the AI transhumanistic corruption from. The same thing that happened to Asgard with when Odin had to create the 9 realms in order to put up the system shields. So, this is where some of that catharsis also came from. Past lives, viruses in the DNA, which in this case it was both one and the same, and death of the old, in with the new, but also holding on to what you needed to out of the old and discarding what you didn't need out of the old in the moment. Even though everything is everything everywhere all at once in the moment, you get the idea. So I will end this here. It is 8:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. Thank you. I do wish to correct that Nibelvirch was supposed to be a mix of English and Swedish, and there was some German in there. Also, it was Nibelvirch and not Needlevirch. On GIC, Chrome says needle, but sometimes he flips the B's and D's around, so it's Nibel. So it was the way the accent came through. It's the way I decoded and encoded it. Well, it doesn't always translate right. I might be hearing needle when it's Nibel. So that's why we got the correct spelling, and that's why we're calling the episode the Nibelvirch. I kind of clung to that word. I had a needle. That sounded like needlework. Now he was joking about that. I had the needlework, sewing up a tapestry, even pulling out old stitches and restitching or correcting holes in a stitch that you need to do. That's how I see it. So I'm going to leave this here. Just know that I was correcting what I said before. So it is 12:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday, November 18th, 2023. Thank you.